In the dead of night, outside a Detroit nightclub, semi-auto fire tears through a Mercedes-Benz. A woman flees from the passenger seat. The driver returns. It's right on the same block as Detroit Police Headquarters, and it's the latest skirmish in a war between two reefer dealers that made more money than even Big Meech and BMF, right there in Detroit in the early 2000s. More than 11 homicides and a bunch of fire were traced to this thing when the indictments came out. And at its center was a guy named Quassan Lewis, bigger than Big Meech, for sure. Quassan Lewis was born in Ypsilanti, which is a little bit southwest of Detroit. So BMS from southwest Detroit, he's from a little bit farther out. Unlike the Flannery brothers, though, Q kept his home base in Detroit even when he got big. By 2004, he would control 50% of Detroit's reefer trade, running an operation that generated $178 million in one 12-month span. Remember, feds claim BMF generated $270 million from 90 to 04, 14 years. This guy did $178 million in 1 year. Take it from me, the reefer biz has a much higher profit margin. Getting them in Arizona, so you're damn near doubling your money. You don't double your money when you sell bricks. BMF was maybe getting them for 14 or 16, and they would put maybe $3,000-$4,000 on each one. Quassan Lewis and the guys associated with him, at least for a couple years in the early 2000s, definitely put a lot more money in their pocket than Big Meech. But let's go back.
He was a kid, and some older guy, had a bunch of, and he wound up getting stuck with. This was back when the law was 20 to 30.
Like those 30s.
The year was 1990, and 18-year-old Quassan Lewis, known on the streets as Q, was facing decades behind bars. Arrested for yayo distribution, he was going to get a 20 to 30. At the time, Michigan had very, very stringent laws. There was something called the mandatory 650 law, over 650 grams. A little more than that brick, you got mandatory life, no parole. I think Q was caught maybe with something between 225 and 650. So he's looking at 20 to 30, but apparently whoever he was working with knew who the real lawyers were and had the money to pay the real lawyers, because he got Steve Fishman, Detroit's probably top, or one of the couple top dope lawyers.
I got him a new trial. He had been convicted. No, I take that back. I represented him at a sentencing. Yeah, I represented him on that case, and the judge gave him I shouldn't say a break. He accurately looked at what his role was in the offense, and he did 3 years, and then he came home. He was 18 years old. I think he's born 72, probably 90.
After doing a few years in the state pen, Q was back on the streets and back in business. Sticking with the yayo apparently, because according to federal documents, by 1997 he was about to make his own move into the big leagues. He went to LA with a guy named Ray Red Amerson to purchase the yams. The deal went sideways when the police seized $484,000 in cash. Was that their first run out there? Probably not. And apparently he had more money because he took that licking and kept on ticking. But it did make him start to think about changing from the yams to the reefers. Now, at that time, I remember, by 98, or like 99, 2000, it seemed like the action in the streets was what we called Reggie Bows, the regular reefer. He got into that business. All the people I personally know who made tons and tons of money selling illicit substances, it was in the reefer. I mean, it was like an unlimited. If you had that at the right price, it was just unlimited. So they were coming out of Arizona primarily. The Detroit-Arizona connection, as everybody knows, is strong. So by 2002, Quassan is connected with some Mexicans working out of Arizona. Arizona's where I got in trouble going to get to Reggie Bowls. I went in January of 02 and didn't come back till July of 03 after a misunderstanding with law enforcement. But Q was able to do it a lot better than me. He was sending thousands and thousands of pounds a week, and then he meets this guy, Tommy Lee Hajis. Tommy Lee Hajis was already doing his thing too. Tommy Lee had a fleet of trucks that he owned. I guess Q had the better connection and Q had the better sales network in Detroit, so they partnered up. Their system was both simple and ambitious. Tractor trailers would bring up to 4,000 pounds at a time to Detroit. They'd pull up. They would pull up in some lot. Guys would pull up, grab all the stuff in warehouses, and then box vans would take them all around the city, and it'd be all gone. The 4,000 bows would be gone in an hour or two. I've been in houses where people had, like, maybe not that much, but a whole lot, and it comes in, right? The load comes. You've got the guys with the guns. Watch the load come in. Count it up, make sure it's there, and then you start taking order. People come, give me 50, give me 80. A lot of it goes out of consignment. I'd rather have somebody owe me money than be sitting around with a house with 1,000 pounds in it, right? So these guys, once they linked Q and Tommy Lee Hajis, it just went through the roof. In just 10 months in 2002, from January to October, 10 months, Tommy Lee Hajis himself, his side of the organization, shipped 36,000 bows to Detroit. So $10 would be $360,000, $100, $3.6 million. If he was making $300 of profit at each, that'd be $10 million in profit. Not many DOPE dealers of any kind see $10 million in profit in 10 months, and they weren't the only ones doing it. Remember, there's rappers from Detroit, the Street Lords. Some of them, Street Lord Rook, they got indicted for a reefer thing. I think in their case it said they sold 45 million in 9 months or something. He may have been a part of one of these, I'm not sure, but there was a few sets of people. I have a Chaldean friend, his relative was doing the same thing. $1 million a month in revenue. So this shows you the massive size of the U.S. market for illicit substances. This is just one set of guys in one second-tier city, right? Millions a month in profit. I mean, what's going on in New York, Chicago, all over the country, L.A.? This is just a mid-sized city. And you would think with all that money they were making that Tommy Lee Hajis and Quassan would be each other's keeper, but something went wrong. Perhaps just old-fashioned greed. Or maybe something personal happened. No one has ever said, because this part of the story involves a lot of violence and homicide, so the stories remain secret. As far as we know, Tommy Lee Hajis made the first move on Q. September 2002, Quassan Lewis shot while leaving a bar that he owns, and 2 weeks later, one of his lieutenants, McKinley Tigner, deceased. Obviously, Q lived.
I think we had a gun case. Once he owned a couple bars.
The violence was escalating, and it would soon reach a crescendo outside a Detroit nightclub called Tiffany's. April 12, 2003, a warm spring night in Detroit. Tommy Lee Hajis pulls up to Tiffany's nightclub in his Mercedes. His girlfriend, Maletta Miller, is in the passenger seat. And what happened next would be pieced together from witness statements, police reports, and court documents. 5 minutes after Hajis parks, a van across the street rears to life, and two guys jump out. One is Lamont L. Boogie Paris, supposedly Quassan Lewis's enforcer, and his partner Rashi Ali Harris. Both got rifles. They opened fire on Tommy Lee Hajis' Mercedes. Tiffany's was right down the street from 1300 Bowman and the old Detroit Police Headquarters. So they shot up the block of where the Detroit Police Headquarters was at, and there was a bunch of people outside. I think someone got hit in the eye. Some people were hurt. Nobody died, certainly not Tommy Lee Hajis. His girlfriend fled on foot. Hajis pops out and returns fire, and an employee of a place that was outside having a cigarette break or something got hit in the eye. Police later discovered 2 handguns, a bulletproof vest, 2 semi-auto rifles, a bunch of shell casings, and a bunch of magazines full. And Rashi Ali Harris, who was wearing body armor and he was on parole at the time, is caught with El Boogie. They ran through a bunch of backyards after Tommy Lee Hajis shot at him, or they ran through downtown out into the neighborhood nearby, and they were grabbed. Rashi Ali Harris did not pass go, did not collect $200. He was on parole with body armor on. He went back to jail, but El Boogie was still out there. And the violence didn't stop. In July '03, Tommy Lee Hajis' half-brother worked in a drive-by. Tommy Lee Hajis starts driving around in a van outfitted with bulletproof glass. And there was a bunch of firebombings, supposedly of stash houses. And the feds listed 11 homicides between Tommy and Q. Mostly, I think, Q doing it to Tommy after the initial attempts on Lewis's life. Now, while the streets of Detroit ran red, Quassan Lewis's operation continued to expand. Remember I said Tommy Lee brought in 36,000 bowls in 10 months? Well, in early '04, January 20th to February 9th of '04, so that's 19 days, Lewis brought in 17,000 bowls in 19 days. 1,000 a day, average. You're making, say, $300 each, profit on each, $300,000 a day in profit for this little run. He probably made more. So he made maybe $4.5 million in 19 days in profit. I'm hard-pressed to know of any much other drug operations other than people at the level of, Medellin, Cali, Sinaloa, etc. So now let's get to the money and how the case starts to break. And it was very strange, well, at least the way the police describe it. Now, sometimes police, to protect their sources, will say that they're an anonymous call from 911 or this or that. And this sort of sounds like that. So there's a hotel out in Novi, a nice suburb of Detroit, northwest of Detroit, and a Spanish-speaking woman is frantic, and she comes to the front desk. She claims there's a dead body in her room. Well, the police are called, the Novi police, the Novi police go in the hotel room, and there's suitcases and duffel bags in the room. $3.4 million in cash, which probably would be, it'd be about probably 10,000, 8,000 Bose wholesale receipts. Like I said, they probably paying, maybe delivered in Detroit $400 or something each. So that would be $9,000, 9,000 Bose worth of receipts. And this is all in cash. And so Novi police gets to seize that. And to this day, the Novi police, if you're ever out in Novi, they have lots of nice new police cars. A lot of it came from the money seized that day. And she says, they're like, well, where's the dead body? And then she says, oh, it's in the room above me. There's some other people. And they go to the room above, and there's, again, no dead body, but there's cell phones and ledgers containing all the notes of the money that has been being picked up. And the woman ends up being identified as a woman named Annette Sanchez Aguirre, or Aguirre, courier linked to Lewis and the girlfriend of Giovanni Ruanova. And that's the guy who is the connect between Arizona and Detroit. He comes to Detroit, he oversees the loads arriving and the collection of the money from Quassan. They're probably partners to some extent. Why this woman did that, if the police wrote it up that way to cover up something, was she just frantic off doing too much drugs? Kind of wild. And that incident launched a massive federal investigation. They knew who these guys were from informants on the street saying their names, but they didn't really have an entree into the organization because it was so smooth. The Bows pull up and they're gone in a couple hours. And Operation Falling Star was what the DEA called it. It brought in the FBI, IRS, Immigration Enforcement, and multiple local police, Southfield, Novi, Detroit, Highland Park, St. Clair Shores. And there was 19 different law enforcements brought in. It took 16 months. As investigators began pulling on the threads, Lewis's empire began unraveling. The numbers uncovered were astronomical. in 1 month. So I just said he did 17,000 pounds. The next month in February, he got another 17,000. Estimated retail value, 17 million. Like I said, about 1,000 each. He's probably paying about half of that. So 17 million. This isn't broken into dime bags. So if you say about 2,500 a bow, so 2.5 times that, so 35 million. It's about 40 million worth of dimes of the reefer and above. Just those guys brought in. Wow. It is peaked estimated half of all the reefer coming in was from Lewis, and 178 million in 04. But even as law enforcement's closing in, the violence is still going on. April 23rd, 05, so another year has passed. Hajis has been hiding out in his bulletproof van. A postal employee named Marcus Smith took to the head outside the post office at 2 a.m. The downtown Detroit, the main, the headquarters post office. His crime? Well, Lewis believed, this, according to the feds, but they didn't charge Lewis with this. That's what they wrote up, but Quassan Lewis was in charge of no homicide. So sometimes the feds try to make you sound mad by throwing a lot of murders, but don't charge you with them. But they claim Lewis had a hitman, maybe Lamont Boogie, pull up this guy, Marcus Smith, because they thought he was related to Tommy Hajis. And wiretap evidence would later reveal the chilling planning of the attack, with Lewis's second-in-command, Saida Walker, obtaining Smith's physical description, license plate number, and work hours from his co-worker just days before the shooting. A few weeks before that, in March of 05, Quassan Lewis's lieutenant, Robin Slick Wilson, but he lived. They hit him, 2 guys hit him with AKs, so Tommy Hajis was trying to hit back. And a court-authorized tap on the cell phone of Lewis's number 2 in command, a guy named Edward Lemon Walker, caught a convo between Walker and Wilson the night before he was shot. And again, there was another wiretap, and Lewis's number 2 guy, Edward Lemon Walker, was caught on the wiretap talking to the shooting victim the night after it happened, and he blamed it on a guy named Levert Vicious Vito Daphne, because that was the only person that had been to his new house. So that was the point where Vicious Vito must have switched sides from Lewis to Tommy Lee Hajis. And Quassan Lewis, Robin Wilson, Saida Walker, and Vito Daphne all got indicted together on July 13th, 05. Slick Wilson, who was the second-in-command of Lewis's second-in-command, had to turn in $2 million in cash. So that's how much money they were making. The assistant to the assistant had $2 million to turn in. As for Quassan Lewis, he was hit with continuing criminal enterprise, which is a minimum of 20 and carries life. That's what Big Meech and them pled guilty to. It does carry an L, starts at 20. And when they swept in on him, they got a lot of stuff. In one day in July, law enforcement got 500 bulls, 500,000 in cash, 41 firearms, a limo, a Mercedes, a Corvette, and a bullet-riddled Dodge Magnum that someone had been gotten shot up in. So to recap, in just about 3 years, Quassan Lewis and Tommy Lee Hajis organizations probably brought in $500 million or something in gross receipts. And remember, BMF, according to the feds, did $270 million from 90 to 04. So the numbers speak. So BMF was huge, but America's got a lot going on. Detroit, the city of dope, had people at the same time that didn't even leave town that probably generated more money. Court proceedings started. There was 11 homicides alleged, 4 firebombings, and the police were really mad about Lamont Paris trying to gun down Tommy Lee Hajis on the same block as police headquarters. And he really came out the worst in the whole thing, but we'll get to that. Now, Tommy Lee Hajis got his own separate indictment. And he did about 10 years. He's been out for a while, but I found a document online with Tommy Lee Hajis in someone else's case, a yayo case, where he provided information against his friend who had been selling yayo to help him in his own reefer case. And the other people, everyone's pretty much home. Saida Walker, Vicious Vito Daphne got out in 2015. Lemon Walker, Slick Wilson in 2011. Quassan Lewis got out maybe in 2019. And Hajis has been home from 2015. I doubt if any of those people are in Detroit. Detroit is not the same place it was. There's not much going on there now, but it was the last time when Detroit was still pretty vibrant and fun. I was hanging out a lot and going to all the clubs and all the same places they would have been. There was a lot of money flowing in. BMF was still rocking. These guys were rocking. And Detroit's nightlife was vibrant. And there's nothing really to do there now, at least definitely not for people of that caliber, not for me. And of the 23 co-conspirators, so that was really a different time and place. Streets are not what they once were, at least in Black America. Now, probably if you're Mexican American, the money's flowing more than ever, or different groups. But I think that probably the peak years of getting money from selling substances for Black America has passed. This was probably when BMF went down and guys like Quassan Lewis and others and Craig Petty's and people around the country in the early mid-2000s. That was it. That was the last of an era for sure. Now, Lamont Paris becomes, see, there's the violence and there's the money in the streets. If you're just trying to get money, sometimes you don't. I mean, Quassan Lewis did a long time, but he's out, right? And he made a lot of money. Lamont Paris, they weren't able to put any other homicides on him, but just for that attempted homicide on Tommy Lee Hajis down the street from Detroit Police Headquarters, they put him on America's Most Wanted. And he was on a run for like a year. They had charged him with assault with intent to kill. That carries 40 to 60 in Michigan. America's Most Wanted got an email that he was in Belleville, Michigan, which is right next to Ypsilanti, where Quassan Lewis was from. And they picked him up, and he was eventually charged and sentenced to 50 to 70 years because he already had a record for violent assaults and firearms. He'd already been to prison. So he got a 50 to 70. He's the one who got by far the worst. I mean, how much did he get paid to shoot at Tommy Lee Hajis? 50,000, 100,000, 200,000? Stick to getting the money and stay away from the violent side. Now, Quassan Lewis was never actually charged with any violence. They alleged these things in his indictment. That's another thing for you to know. You would-be kingpins. They have something called alleging of other crimes. So they charge you with distributing some substance, but they say, well, Al Prophet also killed 8 people. We can't charge him with it because we don't have the evidence, but we're going to mention it in the trial, and if he is found guilty, when you sentence him, take that into account, but we're not going to actually charge him with it because we don't have enough evidence. Kind of wild how they do that. Now, as far as the plugs, the Mexicans, they went on the run. There was a guy, Sergio Corella. He dipped. He was in Nogales, which is right across the border from Arizona. And he was spotted down there living openly, never taken into custody. Ruanova and Annette Sanchez, the girl and her boyfriend or whatever. It's not like she was just some whore that was with him, and maybe she got cooped out and freaked out that there was all this stuff in the place, and she messed the whole thing up. She went on a run for many years. She was taken into custody in 2016 trying to cross the border from Nogales to Douglas, Arizona, and she just got out in 2022, and her boyfriend Ruanova never taken into custody. So the biggest, the plug from Mexico, one of them at least, was able to stay out of custody, and the dumb broad that brought a lot of the heat down goes into the hotel desk and says there's a dead body, but it's $3 million. What the hell was she thinking? Sound like drugs. She stayed on the run for a long time. Maybe she didn't know she was wanted. I don't know why they gave her all that time. They made her do from 2016 to 2022, so she did 6 years. And her Giovanni run over her boyfriend, never taken into custody. Quassan Lewis is free. Lamont Paris is still in the joint. Maybe he'll get some relief of some sort and come home sooner than that. Seems kind of unfair for him to be in for so long. I mean, he's been in now since 06, so he's done almost 20 years. That was the tale of Quassan Lewis, bigger than Big Meech. Tommy Lee Hajis was too during their peak. It's two guys that were rocking on a high level, and something with their personality. It had to be a personality thing. It couldn't have been money. Somebody did something to somebody, and when there's unlimited money, violence can follow. Well, in a violent place like Detroit, where you can get killed for a couple $100 in Detroit, easy. Shout out to Big Meech. That's who. Al Prophet American Dope.